Everybody, welcome back. These are the horror movies that we love of 1960. We've already covered the horror movies of the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. Now we're on to another new decade, new horror movies, creatures, zombies, monsters, killers. Let's check out the horror movies that we love that came out for the year 1960. You're watching Yesteryear and Today. Let's get started. First up we have is The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, otherwise known as Jekyll's Inferno. Dr. Henry Jekyll experiments with scientific means of revealing the hidden dark side of man and releases a murderer from within himself. So there he goes again, experimenting on himself, and he unleashes a monster. The Time Machine, H.G. Wells, a true classic adventure, romance, scientific, and horror movie. A man's vision for a utopian society is disillusioned when traveling forward into time reveals a dark side of society. The Time Machine will not disappoint. Next up we have is The Brides of Dracula. Vampire hunter Van Helsing returns to Transylvania to destroy handsome bloodsucker Baron Meinster, Dracula, who is trying to kill women and build an army of women. The Brides of Dracula. If you like vampires and blood, check out The Brides of Dracula. Next up we have is Man in the Moon. Scientists are looking for a man to send up to be the first man on the moon. A man immune to worry, disease, and even the common cold. But by doing so, they unleash a monster. A monster in the moon. Man in the Moon. If you like horror, comedy, and romance, Man in the Moon. Next up we have is The Hand. Police inspector follows the trail and circumstances of the murder of a one-headed man back to a prisoner of war camp in Burma, 1946. Crime, drama, and horror. So there's killings by a man with one hand. The Hand. 12 to the Moon. Sci-fi and horror. An international team embarks on an expedition to the moon in an uncommonly spacious rocket ship. There they encounter a faceless alien intelligence who conclude that the human race is doomed to die. 12 to the Moon. Next up we have is 13 Ghosts. Horror and mystery. A family inherits what proves to be a haunted house, but a special pair of goggles allows them to see their ghostly tormentors. Imagine that. That'd be a good movie for today. You wear goggles after you're inheriting a house, and you can see all the monsters when you wear goggles. Beyond the Time Barrier. In 1960, a military test pilot is caught in a time warp that propels him to the year 2024. Imagine that. This is the end of 2023, and this movie was made in 1960, and they're already thinking of 2024, where he finds a plague has sterilized the world's population. Beyond the Time Barrier. Blood and Roses. A young heiress, jealous of her cousin's engagement to another woman, becomes obsessed with the legend of a vampire ancestor who supposedly murdered the young brides of the man she loved. Blood and Roses. Blood and Roses. Circus of Horrors. Dr. Rossiter, a plastic surgeon wanted by the police, flees to France and under an assumed name acquires, by murder, a run-down circus. So he kills people, and to hide from the police, he runs a circus full of freaks. Devil's Partner. An old man sells his soul to the devil and turns into a young man. He then uses witchcraft and black magic to win a woman from his rival. So the Devil's Partner sells his soul to become young. And so he's going to end up dying. I'm sorry. Dinosaurs. Or Dinosaurus. After undersea explosions near a Caribbean island, prehistoric creatures are unleashed on the unsuspected population. Dinosaurus. Adventure, comedy, fantasy, sci-fi, and horror. Dinosaurus. Eyes Without a Face. A surgeon causes an accident which leaves his daughter disfigured and goes to extreme lengths to give her a new face. Eyes without a face without a nose, lips without a mouth. Horrors of Spider Island. Survivors of a plane crash on a remote island find it covered by spiders. When bitten, the survivors start turning into spiders. Horror of Spider Island. This movie was fun. It's a horror movie. A lot of jump scares and a lot of kills. House of Usher. Upon entering his fiance's family mansion, a man discovers a savage family curse and fears that his future brother-in-law has entombed his bride-to-be prematurely. House of Usher. The Fall of the House of Usher is a drama and horror movie that will not disappoint. The Incredible Petrified Wood. Action, adventure, sci-fi, and horror. When the cable breaks on their diving bell, 4 people find themselves trapped in a hidden underwater world. The Incredible Petrified World. This is a great sci-fi movie of its time. Check it out. Next we have is Black Sunday. A vengeful witch and her fiendish servant return from the grave and begin a bloodthirsty campaign to possess the body of the witch's beautiful lookalike descendant. So she comes back from the grave to possess the body of her lookalike. Black Sunday. Last Woman on Earth. Not if you were the last woman on Earth. Evie, her husband Harold, and their friend Martin go scuba diving while on vacation in Puerto Rico. When they surface, they find that everyone on the island has died. And how creepy is that? Pretty good, huh? You go scuba diving, you come back for air, but everyone on the island is dead. The Little Shop of Horrors. A clumsy young man nurtures a plant and discovers that it's carnivorous, forcing him to kill to feed it. The Little Shop of Horrors, the original version of 1960. Comedy and horror. A lot of jump scares, a lot of kills. Who can forget part of the greatest horror movie of 1960? Psycho. Horror, mystery, and thriller. A Phoenix secretary embezzles $40,000 from her employer's client, goes on the run and checks into a remote motel run by a young man under the domination of his mother. Psycho. This movie was the best. The City of the Dead. A young college student arrives in a sleepy Massachusetts town to research witchcraft. The City of the Dead. Lo and behold, he casts spells, and then people start to die, and then how do you kill the witch from the witchcraft? Next up we have is The Hell of Frankenstein. What the hell, Frankenstein? What the hell? An assassin uses the remote-controlled monster created by a mad scientist to kill his enemies. So someone is using Frankenstein via remote control to kill all his enemies. The Ship of Monsters. 2 extraterrestrial women are sent on a mission by the Regent of Venus to search for a male of another planet. The Ship of Monsters. This is a sci-fi comedy and horror movie. If you like these sci-fi movies of the 60s, The Ship of Monsters will make you laugh and kind of get scary. The Flesh and the Fiends. In 1828, Scotland, Edinburgh surgeon Dr. Knox does medical research on cadavers he buys from murderers Burke and Hare without questioning the unethical procurement methods. So, Mania, The Flesh and the Fiends. Next up we have is The Amazing Transparent Man. Crime, horror, and sci-fi. A crazed scientist invents an invisibility formula. He plans to use the formula to create an army of invisible zombies. Can you imagine an army of invisible people killing people? Ugh. The Leech Woman. An endocrinologist in a dysfunctional marriage with an aging alcoholic wife journeys to Africa seeking a drug that will restore youth. The Leech Woman. This is a horror, romance, comedy, and sci-fi. Remember, back in the 60s, there weren't just horror. There was comedy and sci-fi. The Lost World. Adventure, fantasy, sci-fi, and horror. Professor Challenger leads an expedition of scientists and adventurers to a remote plateau deep in the Amazonian jungle to verify his claim that dinosaurs still live there. The Lost World. The Playgirls and the Vampire. A lot of vampires movies of late. 5 beautiful showgirls are trapped by a storm and find refuge in a creepy old castle. There'll be vampires. The owner of the castle, a strange nobleman, has a secret laboratory in the basement and has his own plans for the Playgirls. Next up we have is Village of the Damned. Horror and sci-fi. In the English village of Midwich, the blonde-haired, glowing-eyed children of uncertain paternity prove to have frightening powers. Village of the Damned will not disappoint. George Sanders and Barbara Shelley lead the cast. Those are the horror films that we loved of 1960. Probably the best horror movie of 1960 was Psycho. That movie, apparently, I wasn't born yet, but back in 1960, scared everybody that went to the theaters because it was ahead of its time. Alfred Hitchcock, the shower scene, the chocolate syrup in the drain to look like blood, the musical scores, the creepiness about it. Psycho led to Halloween, Michael Myers. It led to, obviously that was 1960, and Michael Myers was 1978. And then you had all the Friday the 13th, but still, the killer and the stabber. So, it was good. Those are the horror movies that we loved of 1960. What do you think about those movies? Any movies I left out? What were your favorite movies of 1960? Do you recall them? I'm sure you have. Alright, I'm Tony. If you haven't already, click subscribe, hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching Yesteryear and today. Those are the horror movies that we loved of 1960. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all real soon in the next video.